Maybe not. There we go. Now we're recording. Great. So, Heidi, tell me who you are and why you're interested in your career.
So my name's Heidi Smith, and I'm the executive director at Winona ORC Industries in Winona. I love working with people with disabilities, and I've had a 25 plus year career of working with people with disabilities. And I got into the field kind of by accident. I was looking for a part-time job in college, and a friend of mine in my classroom said, "Hey, we need some help working with a couple of women who live independently." And I said, "Well, what's wrong with them?" And she said, "Well, they're just people with disabilities." And I'd never been around anybody with disabilities in my life. And I'm like, well, I need the extra money. And my first night, I was hooked for life. And I knew this was going to be my career. I fell in love with those two women. One of them was really challenged with mental illness issues, and I just found that we had good rapport. And I love the idea of giving people tools to find their own story and their own quality of life. And so what we do here is find employment for people with disabilities, and it's great. It's so rewarding. I can't even describe it. There's no better way to deal with a bad day than to hang out with the folks that we serve and let them just sort of brighten your day with their own raw beauty and honesty. So yeah, that's in a very small nutshell.
So then you've been through, I don't know if they were called DSP when we were young, but support personnel, personal care,
Yep.
job coaches, all the way through the options that are available for
Yes.
care.
So I
Good.
started my job as a direct support professional, working one-on-one with the ladies that I mentioned. For them, I worked on independent living skills. And then when I fell in love with it, I got a degree. Then I started working. I got my first supervisory job at what we call an ICF, which is people that lived in kind of a very restrictive group home. This was a long time ago. And I had 12 people I was in charge of. I was a social worker for them. And then I got an opportunity to work in an institution. So Iowa still had institutions. Did that for 3 months. So you know how well that went. The rest of my career has really been working in the community and getting people with disabilities integrated into the community. And so through each one of my positions, I've started at DSP, then I became like a direct supervisor for DSPs, and from there I went to a regional supervisor, and then I actually left Iowa. Well, I had two cool jobs there. You never know where disabilities is going to take you. I worked in brain injury for a while, so I actually got to advocate for people with brain injury at the legislative level. So I learned how to advocate and legislate, which was very cool. I worked at a statewide organization called Lutheran Services in Iowa, and I was their statewide director. And I oversaw people that were medically fragile, people that were really independent. And then I had the opportunity to work for the Iowa Department of Human Rights to oversee 7 groups that are deemed underrepresented populations in our country. And so people with disabilities were one of those groups, and the other one was persons that are deaf or hard of hearing, and then Hispanics and people of color, Asian Pacific Islanders, status of women, and a couple other ones. And I got to do presentations to people that had made a difference in the state of Iowa. I actually worked directly for the governor, and that was an amazing experience. And all of that is because I started as a direct support professional working for people with disabilities, and my world broadened greatly. So now I'm here as an executive director helping people find employment. And another cool chapter in my life is I wrote a grant for Rotary to start a Winona ORC in the Ukraine. And so we're waiting to hear about that. So I guess, a lot of people think it's just going to be your career if you really love what you do, it takes you in so many amazing places. And people with disabilities have opened doors for me that I never thought possible. And there's no greater joy than to spend time with them. So that's less than a nutshell. little bit more of my journey.
It sounds familiar though, because it's, no matter what you plan when you're in high school or college, what happens is very different, unexpected, sometimes good, sometimes bad. You learn from it and you make decisions. So,
Yeah, this was not my plan. I was going to be a neuropsychologist. I was going to um, work with people in a very clinical way. And I still love that field, which is why brain injury is fascinating to me. But it just wasn't what I went for, and it isn't what happened. And now I think, better off doing what I love. So,
mhm, mhm. So then talk to me about education or work experience that is required to be in your position, but then also just to mention some of your job coaches and DSPs, things like that.
sure. So, to get in this field as a direct support professional, really you need a high school diploma, and that's it. It's a great job while you're in college, like when I was in college. It's a great way to kind of learn a little bit about social work, a little bit about people skills, a little bit about navigating the system of human services. It's great. So you don't need a degree to start in the field, but to move up, for most places, you got to have a bachelor's, an AA degree. I ended up in 2015 getting my master's in business, because as a social worker, you don't tend to have all the business background. And I found I was lacking that as I moved up in my career. So I went back to school as an old lady and got my master's in business leadership. And my bachelor's degree is a double major in psychology and human services. That was that whole neuropsychology thing. The
Mhm.
irony in that, and I will tell this to every student in the world that will listen to me, there's no better degree, minor, whatever, for leadership than psychology.
Yes.
Understanding how people think is so critical. You got to understand how to read a finance report and all that good stuff too. But man, understanding how people tick. I used to kid my job would be easy if I didn't have to work with people.
Yeah.
So I guess that would make me somebody behind the scenes, and it's not my personality. So understanding how people tick. I'm glad I picked that for my bachelor's. Um, and yeah, I started at a community college, and then I got my bachelor's. I did that all while I had a kid at home, a 1.5-year-old. My master's, I was old, like I said, and sometimes your education career isn't exactly what you think it's going to be either. So I think for me, I follow the passion of my heart. My father wanted me to be an insurance salesperson. I knew in 5 minutes that wasn't going to happen. That's not my personality. I hated it. So you learn as you get a little older what makes you tick.
Mhm.
My friends in high school said I'd make a great leader because I was a great delegator. Um, and which was a dig, but then proved to be true. So I don't know. I took a lot of cues from people around me and found things that I was passionate about and made it work. So
Mhm.
don't be afraid to go for a degree that doesn't feel like it fits something nice and neat, because it will work into what you want to do.
Mhm. Yep. Very true. So tell me what a typical day looks like for you.
Well, this is COVID. I ain't had a typical day for a year, but I'll tell you what it typically typicalness looks like. A lot of meetings. I am in a lot of meetings, and I manage and coordinate this organization. So I do a lot of big picture discussions, financial discussions, programmatic discussions. I have a team of amazing directors who I lead and guide, and they have goals and they have expectations. And so I'm not quite down in the weeds. Sometimes I am. I have worked every department that is here. I have
Mhm.
scrubbed toilets in the community with our clients. I have folded laundry. I have done shredding, and I've tried to do press buttons on our production floor, and I'm not good at it. Uh, but that is not my normal day. My normal day is very high level. Lots of paperwork, lots of communication with the community. I'm the face of our organization. So as an executive director, it's my job to make sure that I am out there promoting our organization. And our DSPs get the fun work. They get to work every day with the people we serve. And I get to hear their stories, which sustains me. But there are times when I just go sit in the lunchroom and chat with them because I have to remember why I go to all these meetings every day. But as an executive director, I laugh because people think it's super easy and sexy, and there's nothing farther from the truth with that. And honestly, COVID's taught, if anything, when a hard, big pandemic comes along or whatever crisis, it all falls on your lap. So if you're willing to be a leader, you have to be willing to put in 78 hours a week. You have to be willing to make hard decisions, let people go if you have to, close services, deal with pissed off people, listen to the people we serve, family members. And my boss is not a boss. And that's something that a lot of people don't, when you're young, you don't realize. If you're going into nonprofit work and it's all heart driven and you move up, when you become an executive director, your boss is a group of volunteers. And that's called a nonprofit board, which is a very weird thing to get accustomed to if you've never been around that. I have 11 bosses. And there's a lot of autonomy, but there's also a lot of expectation with that. So, there's just my typical day is putting out fires, planning things, attending meetings, and most of all, moving the needle towards the next thing for our organization.
And I have had this conversation with other people that experience that you had as a DSP and at each of the other levels makes what you're doing now possible because you have that perspective and that knowledge. I mean, there's quite a few in leadership positions. There's quite a few people who nobody graduates from high school and is a CEO.
I hope
not going to happen
unless you're an entrepreneur.
That could
you can do whatever you want.
Make your own CEO. But it's that experience isn't so important to be a leader for the organization because all of the people who work with you know that you've been there.
I have a lot of I come with a lot of equity, social capital, and empathy for the people that do the work at every level, because I've been at every level. I haven't been an accountant, I haven't been an HR director, but I've definitely dabbled in their world. So every person in our organization, I've never cleaned the roof. The maintenance guy has one over on me on that. But over most things I've done, and you don't get to jump from one to the other. I earned my stripes. I believe, I think people think that, I remember interviewing a couple people a few years ago. They got a bachelor's degree and they thought they should automatically be a leader, but had zero experience of any kind relatable. And I just said, you're going to lose credibility so fast with the people you work with. You got to earn your stripes. And doing it in college gets it sort of the ball rolling. If you feel like a field is something you really want to pursue, there's always something you can do to move that needle towards what you're accomplishing.
I agree. So let's talk about demand in the industry in terms of care people with disabilities, and obviously COVID is impacting that. But if we could touch on both during COVID and then outside of COVID time, that would be great.
So there's about 30 plus years ago, we had a movement in America to move people with disabilities out of institutional care and into community living, which is an amazing, wonderful, good thing. The challenge with that, and especially right now, is that we don't always have enough people to do the work. A lot of people don't think about our field when they're thinking about careers. Like I said, I can probably bring 10 people in here and 9 of them would say, oh, I stumbled into this field because, similar to me. And so we struggle with finding direct care supports. It's a unique job. You've got to have a balance between empathy and sympathy and a little bit of tough love when you're working with folks and trying to help them manage and navigate into the world. And it's hard. It's a lot easier to do other types of retail work or customer service work. Our work is hard but rewarding in ways you can't imagine. So yeah, there's a lot of demands on our field. Winona ORC is a really unique organization in our current field because we actually do the commercial laundry for the hospital. So we have our soiled side of laundry is ran. There's one staff over there, but the guys that run our soiled side of laundry, they're all people that we serve. And that is a technical job. It's a very specific skill set. They do an amazing job. And our work is demanding because obviously you don't want to go to the hospital with dirty linens. So we've never, during COVID, we never closed. And for the 3 months we had to let clients go, all of our staff did things like folding laundry and cleaning toilets. And so God bless them for being mission driven. And then what we normally do here, and the demand is so great, is to integrate people with disabilities into the community. And so we do a lot of skill building here. We do a lot of education about what to do and not to do at work. And those needs are great. And as soon as this pandemic is over, it's going to be even greater. There's going to be a great need for our folks' skill sets out in the community, and that's what we have to be prepared for. So yeah, there's a lot of demands on our, and it's wonderful. It's an ever evolving. If you've got a personality where you just want to do the same thing for the rest of your life, do not go into human services. But if you want evolution and process improvements and quality of life differences and an evolution of where people are today to where they're headed, this is an amazing field to see that happen. And so, yeah, there's a lot of demands, and there will always be a need for direct care supports in our field all the way through to upper management.
Mm-hmm. So any last words of advice for high school students?
You know, it's so corny, and yet it is so true. You have to do what you love. And people always say that. And I remember in high school going, well, I like to sleep, and I like boys, and I like doing my hair. Which was a long time ago. But I had a job in high school, and I actually worked at a drugstore. And I used to tell people I sold drugs in high school. It was never went over well in an interview, so maybe don't go that route. But I learned people skills, right? I used to have, this is back before things were quite as regulated as they are, but I used to count pills for the pharmacist because it was a pharmacy. I learned how to manage conflict when customers came in and were unhappy. And so all those things, even though I no longer sell drugs, I don't do that. I didn't do it then. Anyway, anytime you can get an opportunity to work when you're young, even if it's part-time, you're going to gain something for your future. So my rule of thumb is find something that you love, do it well. If you can't find it, you create it. This is an amazing country where you can create opportunities for yourself. So if you don't see it on the map, then create it and find an amazing support system that will help you do that. But and if you love helping other people, then you need to call me.
Well said. I love it. Well, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your insight into the industry. And I'm going to stop recording now so that we have what we need.
Great.